All right, we're back for an NFL midseason checkup. Welcome back, Beds. How you doing?
Doing awesome, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to either tease on myself or
Yeah,
maybe I dominated a couple things.
there's a couple. I was looking at them. We'll pull some up, spend a little time talking about our thoughts in the beginning of the season, and then we are going to do our top 5 Tom Brady games. It feels like this is the last run for him. What do you think?
I don't know. So last run probably with Tampa. I mean,
You're still thinking he goes someplace else after.
I got to be honest with you, man. Our girl Giselle is out of the way.
But now he can play till he's 50. And
Now he can play until he's 50. I want to say something. I know that I mentioned San Francisco as a landing spot.
yeah,
And look, I just want to double down and just say more crazy things here. What if the cap friendly, what appears to be a young defense Patriots team,
I knew you were going to say it.
all of a sudden, comes knocking on the door and it's like, maybe we got a 2-year run with TB. We still have 3 years left on Mac Jones' deal. Zappy's behind him. I don't know. You start concocting all these crazy things.
And we'll get to the Pats, too. Pats defense looks good. I just don't know that they have enough weapons for him. That would be the craziest story if he came back to the Pats. But definitely feels like it's his last run with Tampa. We'll go over his top 5 favorite games that we've had each for him. But let's revisit some of the predictions that we had. So actually, some of the storylines. I want to get your thoughts on a couple things. I'm going to ask you, just looking back at some of the things that you were excited about going into the season. And one of them for you was Rodgers versus Mahomes.
Yeah.
I just want to get your thoughts on how that has been going at this point in the season.
This one is kind of curious for me because, and I've talked to Tangway about this in the past where I was always kind of pro Rodgers when it came to, he's had some he's had some really good receivers, but he's had a lot of turnover.
Yep.
Receiver-wise, but obviously he's had Jordy and a couple staples, Devontae, to name a few, but it always seems like he got new receivers and he was just throwing darts everywhere and adjusting to that. I used to kill Brady on that. I'm actually surprised with my Mahomes-Rodgers prediction how bad it looks so far for Rodgers.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Mahomes is probably the MVP favorite right now. I don't know, I might be talking nonsense, but it feels like he's playing really well right now. And I don't know what the odds are, but I would imagine he's up there. And Rodgers is a guy that's probably like the 15th best quarterback in the league right now. And they both lost their best receivers last year. I mean, you could say it's a little bit different with Mahomes because he still does have Kelsey, but he lost Tyreek. Rodgers lost Adams, and Mahomes has been able to have a still successful first half of the season when Rodgers just looks awful out there, totally disinterested. Probably his last year in Green Bay. It's weird to see.
It has a little bit of 2019 Brady with the Pats feel to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's
Like he's going to be playing in a new uniform next year. Whether it's the Jets or that'd be kind of crazy, but he could land in a couple different spots.
It's kind of interesting too. It's like you see some of these greats, LeBron James, for example. Like you remember when he walked out of Cleveland, he kind of threw his jersey off that Celtics playoff game that they lost. He had that elbow thing. You could kind of tell it was just the end. Brady 2019, you could tell it was the end. It feels like that for Rodgers. But like Mahomes, though, man, I watch some of these games, and it's just like you take their greats for granted sometimes. You just expect them to be good. And that's where this thing with Rodgers is a little different for me because it's like, yeah, dude, you have new guys. Throw darts all over the place. You're Aaron Rodgers. That's what Mahomes is.
Who did he lose? He lost Devontae, which is obviously a big piece to lose, but he still's got the same running backs. I think most of the other receivers are, he lost, was it Scanling maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not like, I would expect him to be having a better year.
It's classic. He's checked out, and you start to wonder why. Like, why do these guys get like that? Is it just you've been around so long, you got a bunch of money in your pocket? Maybe you're just sick of looking at everybody that you see every year, and it's like the mic, everything's just pointing to you, and maybe you're just like, you know what, I've had enough.
It's wild though because he's making $40-something million this year to play, maybe even more than that. So it's like, are these guys allowed to check out? Yeah, despite all the things that you just said, like, shouldn't you grind through that for the amount of money that you've been paid to play this sport? It's weird to see, but doesn't have a good feel for Rodgers, where honestly it feels like the Chiefs are the team to beat in the AFC right now. Feels like it. Bills seem like they may have peaked. Yeah, I think we both had Josh Allen for MVP picks, and who knows what happens the last month and a half of the regular season. But it definitely feels like they peaked, and I don't have such a great feel for them now as you do for someone like the Chiefs.
Hey, do we overlook like the checking out factor as far as the money's concerned? Like you just mentioned it, he's making $40 million. You would think that he gets up every day and gives maximum effort. Are we overlooking the fact that he probably does look at his crypto account? He looks at his bank account and he's just like, Jesus, there's so many zeros in here. Why am I doing this?
Yeah. Hey, I'll be interested to see if he lands someplace else next year, wraps it up, calls it a career.
He might just need a change of scenery like Brady did. And real quick on Josh Allen.
Yeah.
You kind of notice that he slips in clutch moments.
Yeah, he just might not have that clutch gene or that gear.
I know it's early. He's my MVP prediction, but I'm like, he's got a couple bad losses this year.
Yeah.
But anyhow,
we'll see. I'm still pulling for him, I guess. I would like to see them have some success, but the Pats aren't going to do it. Which brings us to the Pats.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I think I was laughing at myself a few weeks after the season started, that we talked about the Pats' goal for them winning a playoff game.
Yeah.
And I thought that was silly at the time. It partly still is, but I think that they have a pretty realistic chance to get into the playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see how the next month and a half goes again, but here we are. They're probably looking at the 7th seed maybe, and they'll have a shot at it. But, do we think that they could win a playoff game with the way things have been going so far this season?
I like the young defense. As much as Bill's been killed, for the last, probably if you take today's conversation back 7 years, other than the last 2 years, granted the draft before, you got Damian Harris, you got a couple guys out of that draft, but nothing much. The last couple of years of drafts, I mean, I like the young talent on the defense. So it's it's bumming me out that Barmore's hurt, though.
I know.
Those that we have, but Godshaw's been playing good, Lawrence Guy's been playing good. So it's I feel like they're keeping us competitive. The line play.
Well, I mean, they're definitely keeping us competitive. You look at a game like Sunday, that's only because of. I mean, obviously the Jets' offense is terrible too, but our offense is awful.
Well, a lot of people are saying Zappy this, Zappy that, but I think Zappy got a little bit exposed in that Bears game.
Yeah.
A little bit. I mean, granted, everything did look good up until that moment, but if you really break down the tape, and I follow some guys on Twitter, Randy, I know it's I could ramble all day about the Patriots. I watch line play. I watch highlights from that. I look at their stats. Our line play is absolutely atrocious. Yeah. So anybody that's slamming Mac Jones right now, I'm getting needled about my Mac Jones rookie cards. I take that all the time, but it's man, if you look at the tape, it's brutal. They don't give him time.
How many times was he sacked this weekend?
7.
Yeah, it's a lot of times.
Yeah, and it's I think there was only a handful of times that he had more than up to 3 seconds or maybe a smidge over 3 seconds to go through some progressions. So it's
as a second-year quarterback, he's not Tom Brady, who we'll get to. He can't, he's not going to be as prepared to make these quick throws in under 2 seconds. He probably needs a little bit more time, and if you don't have it, it makes it a lot harder.
This is kind of funny to bring up, but it's you played football. I played flag with you. I played quarterback. And I'll tell you, those games that the guys up front gave me an extra second, I was throwing darts all over the place. You know what I mean? It's the second you start getting rushed, your brain gets scrambled. And I think Mac's dealing with that.
I don't think it helps either, the offensive coordinator situation. I know a little bit's made of that. The whole Joe Judge, Matt Patricia situation. You almost wonder how much they're putting him in a position to succeed on the scheme side of things, too. So, bad combination of things going on, I think, right now with the offense. Defense is what's going to give them a shot, like you said. So if they can sneak in, maybe play someone like Tennessee, maybe they can sneak out a playoff win, and our predictions don't sound so stupid.
They have Minnesota Thursday.
Yeah.
So I don't know when you're going to drop this. Thanksgiving. They have the Bills twice. Mm-hmm. They have Miami again. They're 6-4. Can they get to 10 wins?
But does 10 even need to get you in there anymore as that 7th seed? You might be able to sneak in with 9, being 9-8. But yeah, they just got to win 3-4 more games.
The thing is like we've collapsed the last couple of years, and I'll relax on this for a second after I get this out. Is that you can never discount a Bill coached team. So it's like, you know what I mean? So it's like I'm not low on them. I'm not too high on them. They're sitting there 2 games over 500. Are they going to get in the playoffs? Probably. Will they? I don't know. Yeah. But will they win that playoff game that I predicted? I'll tell you. I'm not going to double down and say it's going to happen.
Yeah, it would be nice, but we'll see. At least they might have a shot at it. So then the next thing is Tom Brady this year, right? So we're going to go over some of our favorite Brady games throughout his career. But what are your thoughts on Tom? I think you had TB12 being TB12 as your number one thing looking forward to in the season. I think I had it as my 4th. Love Tom. What's going on with him this season?
Loaded gun. Line play. They lost a couple guys in the preseason. Evans in and out of the lineup. You're really not expecting much out of Julio Jones if you pick up Julio. But again, he starts the season, immediately gets hurt. 6 games in, he's back, catches a ball, immediately hurt. So it's like you don't have that consistency. Godwin comes off of blowing his knee up, makes it for the start of the season. Naturally, he has hamstring issues. So it's like, probably a little bit of a combination of hurried, making his progressions, knowing that nobody's there that consistently should be there. And it's like your studs are in and out. I mean, the game that we went to, the Packers game in Tampa, I mean, nobody was playing that game. And it's like, it was, again, I keep referencing 2019 Brady. So and then you throw in, Giselle taking off. I'm sure that wasn't easy. So it's like you got a combination of everything working against him. But he almost just set an NFL record for,
2 seconds without an interception.
Yeah, that bummed me out. I think he was like 5 away, and he threw that pick.
Yeah, it was too bad he didn't get that one because he had been throwing the ball pretty well. How much do you think he misses Gronk? Is that a thing? Is that, is he, Gronk obviously isn't Gronk that we remember him in New England over the past couple of years, but is not having a good tight end outlet hurting him? Probably a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's so much to be said for like that relationship personally and then on the field. Like there's a synergy there. Gronk knows what Brady wants if a guy's on his left or right shoulder, if it's an option route. You know what I mean? Just those stupid things that you've been doing with somebody for 12 years just isn't there anymore. So it's like he's learning that new rookie tight end he has. I don't know. I think that's, again, all of these guys have been out and Gronk's gone. Randy, that's why it kind of leads me to, I know that I predicted San Francisco, but it's like, does he re-up?
You didn't pick San Francisco.
What's that?
You didn't pick San Francisco.
I was saying, I saw.
Oh, for him to go to. I thought you were saying to win the NFC. Yeah. Okay.
You were just about to call me out. So it's like, I don't know. It's like now with the Giselle thing, does he stay down in Tampa? Because, does Giselle, kind of create roots there? I heard that maybe she lives across the street or something crazy like that.
Well,
which I can see them doing. So
they have a place in Miami. His other son is in New York, I think. There was like a thing around wanting to stay on the East Coast to make that whole thing easier. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what ends up happening for him for next year. Other thing I want to say about Tampa is I don't know if you realize it, but their run game is historically bad, right?
Yeah.
Like Fournette's not doing much.
Yeah.
I think Giovanni Bernard is coming back. I mean, I don't know that he can really contribute at this point, but their run game isn't helping them out. So it's a bad mix. Then like you said, throw in the Giselle stuff. Now you get the FTX stuff going on.
Yeah.
Dude, there is a lot of weird stuff going on for him. I don't know. The thing about the NFL is you never know. Teams get hot at the end of the year. They get healthy. So, the way the NFC is, I think that there's just as good a chance as anyone for them to get hot at the right time. But it doesn't necessarily feel that way right now.
The cryptocurrency thing,
yeah.
One thing that's sort of sitting here that I'm waiting to hear is, like, you have Brady and some big names. I think Curry was in there also. Now you start to wonder, before that collapse, was Curry given a chunk? Was Brady given a chunk? How do you find that out before the collapse? Which then, you start getting into, upper echelon type of societal things where it's like, why does Brady get his money back? And so it's like, if that starts to drop, now you have another thing that Brady has to deal with. I will say this. What if he heads north?
You heard it here first. All right, a couple more predictions I want to touch on for a brief second before. Things that you had that aren't probably going to come to light is AFC West, you picked the Raiders. Not looking too good for the Raiders. I had the Chiefs, thankfully. I look like a smart guy on that one. NFC East, you actually picked the Eagles. And I was, not that the Cowboys are having a bad season, but I don't know that I ever thought the Eagles were going to start out as hot as they have. So they look pretty good. Then the one that I was going to call you out before, you picked the Rams in the NFC West and then also going to the Super Bowl. And there's no way in hell that is happening at this point.
That is so depressing for me. It's like, it's like, Beds, do you want to be on a podcast? Beds, do you want to talk about sports? Sure, man. Let me give this obnoxiously safe prediction that looks completely terrible.
Well, when we have the NBA follow-up one, you'll see that I took the Heat to win the East, and then Joel Embiid, I think, to win the MVP. So
I've been excited about that, by the way.
It's weird to quietly root for the Miami Heat just to vindicate my pick on the podcast. So anyways, I know how you feel, but still a lot of season to go. I don't know that the Rams are going to get in there, but anything can happen on those other ones. So why don't we jump to our top Brady games? Before we do that, we were talking about Brady before, and I do want to talk about him a little bit more before we go on to the games, but have you found it's hard to root for Brady anymore? Is something about your love of Brady changed at all? Besides all the weird stuff, you had the comment about the military stuff that he had, just things about him, the Brady brand clothing. I'll always be a Tom Brady guy, but does it feel different now, or what are your thoughts on that?
I've been describing it as the Manning years.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the last couple of years of Manning's career where all of a sudden he was in commercials, he was hawking products? It has that. And one of my sort of annoyances with Tom is he's always, I think Bill does an amazing job in New England with kind of getting guys to split down the middle with their conversations, never too high, never too low. The military thing, he's kind of veered off a little bit and given us a little bit of raw Brady, and you start to see the human side of him and making mistakes. So, I guess that could be a mark against him. But I'll tell you, when he left, I didn't blame him. You know what I mean? It was like business as usual for the Pats. So I kind of, as a fan, just being a fan of the Patriots for as long as I have, I immediately turn the page. You and I have talked about it, or, we're in conversations and text and stuff. You know how I handled it. I barely said a damn word about it, but man, did it tear me up when he was gone, because it's church for me on Sunday. Yeah. It took a little while for me to get used to him in Tampa.
Yeah.
I'm back.
It's still weird, man. I don't know. 3 years later, I know when he moved on from the Pats, I was like, you got to be kidding me, and I just couldn't believe that that's how it was going to end. I actually didn't move on quite as quickly. I was pissed at the Pats. I still think that Brady, and he wanted out too, so I get that. But I always thought he should be given the opportunity to end his career in New England on his terms. And it seemed like they just didn't want him, and it was business as usual at the end of the day. And I guess I respect that. But I wasn't happy with the Pats, so I kind of moved on from the Pats probably for a year. And I was happy actually to see him win a Super Bowl in Tampa, which is weird to say, but I guess it's just the NFL. That stuff happens.
I've been listening to Jim Gray and Brady and Larry. They had Barkley on this week.
Yep.
I've been enjoying listening to Tom because he's starting to go maybe just a little layer beyond the middle in his conversations, which is making me curious about post-playing day Brady. Yeah. But my love for Tom is kind of back. It's really weird that I'm describing a love for a guy that doesn't know me, but. I was. Well, go ahead.
That's sports, dude. It's just when there's fandom involved and there's passion around sports and sports teams and players on these teams. It's one of those things. It's part of life. Brady has given me so many good memories over the past 20-something years. It's hard not to obviously have a high opinion of him.
I mean, the thing, and I know I keep saying this. The thing is he looks good. Now he's not married. it's like I used the San Francisco thing because I saw a team that's ready and they just need a quarterback. Not that I'm hammering on Jimmy G, but Tom Brady, Jimmy G, I think you're going Tom.
Of course.
Again, with the New England thing, defense in place, cap space. Is it out of the question that a motivated Brady?
If he did, like Brady has always created interest by free agents in whatever team he's gone to. Same thing happened in Tampa as soon as he went there. If that did happen in New England somehow, I don't know how the hell it would. Like there would be interest from free agents, though. Receivers, other playmakers, maybe even at a discount. So it could be cool.
And it's like the capologist Bedard starts, looking at, again, Jones's contract, looking at the cap, and it's like, 2 years, and then you have that fifth-year quarterback option for Mac, where it's like you can see what you have after having him on the bench for a couple of years. You would have 2 years with Zappy. So it's like all these crazy things start going on in my head where it's like, come back to us, Tom.
It would be unbelievable. So anyways,
all right,
20 minutes here. Let's get into our top 5 Tom Brady football games. I want you to go first because I know you're just chomping at the mouth but what do you got, man?
So I have sort of the criteria that it's more Patriots specific. My top 5 list.
Same here.
Some Tampa games. The Packers win in the playoffs was awesome last year. That late Jets touchdown to win it in New York, which was like another Brady beats the Jets moment.
Yep.
I threw Tampa aside. So
Same.
Number 5.
It didn't even cross my mind for the Tampa ones. So
yeah, it's like. All right, Randy. Number 5 on my list. It's a very boring game, but it sort of starts the Brady conversation, and it's the 2001 Super Bowl.
Okay, nice.
Okay, very, very boring game. Let me give you some stats here. Actually, let me ask you a question. How many yards do you think he threw for in that game?
If I had to guess, because I will say this one is not on my list. If I had honorable mentions, it would have been because it was like the start of first Super Bowl. Definitely great memories around that game. So it's not on my list. I did not look at the stats. If I had to guess, I would say he had 275 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's not even close. Dude, it's such a boring game. 145 yards and a touchdown.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I have a better memory in my mind than what the reality was.
But I will say this, what's kind of great about the game and why I put it in my list is that I took some notes, 53 of those 145 yards were in that last drive. So you got Wiggins in there, you got the great Troy Brown and J.R. Redmond. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? This guy you never talk about caught a bunch of balls that last drive. And I think one of the things that you'll end up looking back on if you denote this game as the start, if you will, of all the greatness, that just cool as a cucumber move of spiking the ball to clock it, and the ball just perfectly comes back up in his hands. He's just like, oh, here we go. You know what I mean? So
his clutch resume with those 53 yards at the end, like that was big because the Pats I think were up 14-0 at one point. I think Ty Law had an interception for a touchdown that would have put it out of reach.
Yeah.
Called back. I think, obviously the Rams tied it up eventually, and then Clutch Tom had to come through. And it was awesome. And they're 14-point underdogs to begin with against the greatest show on turf. So, great game. Love it.
Brand,
any other thoughts on it?
I have a question for you.
Sure.
What's your number 5?
My number 5 is, it is not a playoff game or a Super Bowl game. It actually is, just pulling it up right now, back in 2007 against the Dolphins in Miami, Pats won. I mean, it's going to sound random, but Pats won 49-28. Brady had 6 touchdowns, 2 to Moss. And so back in 2007, I'll never forget when we traded for Moss, what a big day that was. I was like, wow, we have Randy Moss on the Pats. And you had all this hope around having Randy Moss on the Pats. And it played out exactly like you would have hoped that it would have. He was unstoppable. They were unstoppable together. So when I think of this fun season, almost undefeated season, which I don't want to get into, but this almost undefeated season, I think of this game and specifically a couple touchdown passes to Moss. that he had where it was just like these guys were unstoppable, peak of their game. So Brady's stat line, 21 for 25, 354, 6 touchdowns, no picks. I mean, just freaking domination. Perfect pass.
Just no big deal.
Yeah.
Before we move to 4, during that summer and then I don't think it happened in the summer. The camp prior to the season starting, he actually pulled a hamstring. Mm-hmm. Randy Moss.
Yeah.
You had Ron Borges, who is a forever permanent block of anything that guy writes, because I just can't respect a second of anything he spews out, because everything is negative. Yeah. He killed it. A couple of other guys, Shaughnessy was killing it. And I was just like, man, we gave up a 4th for this guy. It's not really a high draft pick. He's a unicorn. God, why does he have to have a hurt hamstring? I was starting to listen to the noise, and then, bam, drops a bang biscuit on us.
So that one summarizes the 2007 season. It bums me out that Brady hurt his knee after that, and Moss had a season that I think was decent with Castle. But, they ended up trading him the year afterwards in the middle of the season. So we had that glimpse of what could have been, and I definitely enjoyed the hell out of it while we were in the middle of it. But it felt like it could be so much more, and it was just kind of cut a little bit short. So, but that one's one I'll always remember, because it was just fun to watch.
It was techno football in real life.
Yeah, it was awesome. All right, what do you get for 4 for you?
A quick story. It's the Baltimore playoff game from 2015 when we were down twice. So I was actually coaching then with Shane and Marcus when the kids were in travel. I was in Wells. I had my phone off. Listen, I was scanning the crowd. I was scanning my buddies in the stands. People were looking at their phones. We were all kind of annoyed that there was a game during a playoff game. And I could see the disappointment in people. And I was just like, man, don't look, Chris. Dude, nobody told me. I got home and we're down 14 right away. Mm-hmm. I'm like, come on.
We've had some losses to Baltimore over the years too, so it's like you never really know with them in the playoffs. Did we win on a missed field goal or a missed something at the end?
So that was a different playoff game.
Okay, different one. Okay.
Yeah.
We've had
So a couple of quick things, 367 yards, 3 touchdowns, an interception. That was the game that featured, and listen, man, I love playoff Dola. Mm-hmm. Like, if I could replay, like you're talking about Moss, if I could watch Dola catch more playoff touchdowns from Tom, sign me up, because that's all that kid did. But, yeah it featured Jules throwing the touchdown. You could see those 2 idiots probably after that game in Boston bars just killing it. But something random about that game, Bud, is that we only had 14 rushing yards that game. So it was really all on the shoulder of Brady. So listen to these stats. 6 rushing attempts by Brady for 0 yards. LG had 3 attempts for 0 yards. The great Brandon Bolden had 3 attempts for 7 yards, and then Shane Vereen had the rest. So really, you have that great throw of Jules, Dola, but other than that, it was TB.
Was this really 2015, or was it later than that?
It was the 14 season, but played in.
So 15. I did not realize that. I remember that game because I was actually on an airplane when all that was happening, and the pilot was giving us updates, and I didn't see any of it. Didn't have TVs on the flight, so pilot was giving us updates as we were flying back into Boston, and I missed that. I mean, I saw the highlight of the Jules throw to Dola, but yeah, that's a pretty memorable game, no doubt.
Big travel guy, Randy Forcier.
Oh God, yeah, that'll be another pod. Number 4 for me is going to sound strange. Just my last regular season game. I want to get a couple regular season games out of the way, and then other stuff will be playoff, Super Bowl type stuff. But I don't know if this game will be something that you remember. But for me, it was 2009. Week 6 against the Titans in New England. They had their red jerseys on, and it was snowing, and Brady had 6 touchdowns. And do you remember what the final score of that game was?
47-0.
It was 59-0.
Oh, damn it.
Basically, same thing, right? But like 59-0. Brady was 29 of 34 with 380 yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. I don't know the times that he threw those touchdowns, but I feel like he had 6 touchdowns like very early into the third period. He could have had 100 touchdowns that game if they didn't take their feet off the gas. It was complete domination. Love the red uniforms for the Pats. Love the snow. It's a game that I'll always it was like peak Brady, year back after the knee stuff. It was awesome.
I think that was a couple of games after we got Deion Branch back in a trade, and he actually scored. It actually was just this streak down the sideline that Brady threw a dart to, and it sort of just cut through everybody. And I'm like, wow, this is the day that Brady's going to have. Because it wasn't a throwing day. You know what I mean? It was a snow day.
They somehow put up 59 points. Yeah, it was 59-0 in the third quarter. And then they just kind of took their foot off the gas the rest, rightfully so, with that type of score. And actually, looking at this, Randy Moss did have 1, 2, 3 touchdowns. Welker had a couple touchdowns. So it was just a great game all around. What's that?
I think he had 4 touchdowns in the first quarter, and then he had 1 in the second, and 5 at half was like tied some record or something.
Yeah, so actually, if looking at it now, he had 1 to Lawrence Maroney, which is kind of funny in the first quarter, and then he had 4 in the second. Maroney had a run, so he had 5 in the second quarter, and then he had 1 more in the third quarter to Moss. So it was just wild, man. Wild. 45 at half.
It's a really good game, Randy. I don't blame you for putting it where it is. It's sort of in my honorable mention area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. So, all right, what do you got for 3?
The Seattle Super Bowl.
My number 2. So let's talk about it. Yeah.
Okay, so some stats. So the Pats won 28-24. Mm-hmm. Brady, 328 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And it's sort of the start of the second phase of the Super Bowl era for us. I don't think Tom was good early in this game. I mean, he had a red area interception, which, by the way, as great as Tom has been, some of his red area interceptions are so bad. And it was in this game. So that was a really good Seattle team, actually.
Great thing. Yeah, they just won the Super Bowl the year before. But Brady made some clutch throws that game. I remember a touchdown to... did he have a touchdown to Welker that game? I mean, not a Welker, Edelman.
Yeah, so they ran this what was
in and out real quick.
Yeah, and they screwed it up, and they went back to it. And even if you look at the replay of that, Tom's ball on that second throw was just like, ah! You know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to screw it up again because he threw the first one so bad. So, good execution, bad ball, great play call though.
But if you look at it, they're down. I think they're down 14 to. They're down by 10 with 7 minutes, almost 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Touchdown pass to Amendola. Touchdown pass to Edelman. Just obviously, the great ending. The Butler interception. Brady jumping up and down on the sidelines. It was awesome. And like you said, it was the beginning of that second Hall of Fame run of Tom Brady's career. Because, up to that point, if he never won another Super Bowl, he was already a Hall of Famer. But then he had this whole other Hall of Fame career the second half of his time with the Pats, and it kind of began with this game.
I want to bring up, too, it's we ended up seeing in the documentary Do Your Job, Ernie Adams, how late in that Super Bowl pre-practice, Ernie sort of, Ernie's like this fictional character with the Pats. It's like, Bill's Yoda. He basically pulls out that play and has them run it, and Malcolm got toasted in practice and got lit up by Patricia. And then they ran it right, and he played it right. The fact that these guys, I want to make sure that I say this right. Malcolm Go. So it starts with Malcolm Go, Flores.
Yes.
So Flores knows what's coming. Bill knows what's coming. They know to put Malcolm out there. The fact that kid was quick enough, the quick twitch stuff, you know what I mean? Identifies it, jumps it, ends the game. So it's like the announcers talk nonstop about everything about you should have ran the ball. So it sort of becomes the narrative. I don't like that Malcolm actually didn't get the holy cow. Look at the play that this kid made. Undrafted free agent. It's like, I get it. It's not sexy. It's not the take where Lynch is like the popular one, but the kid made an amazing play and won a Super Bowl. Yeah.
One of the all-time most memorable plays, I think, in Super Bowl history. There's no doubt about it.
One of the top defensive plays ever. I mean, right up there with Harrison returning. I don't know. There's just all kinds of
it might be the single best defensive play in the Super Bowl. That I do not know all of them, but I can't imagine a more important play to win a Super Bowl to make that type of interception right at the goal line. I think Belichick didn't call timeout, too.
He didn't. Exactly.
Didn't call timeout, where a lot of people were questioning whether that was the right call, or at least in the moment, but that ended up being the right move, making them play it out, and they obviously won it, so.
Well, I guess for those that are listening, it's like by Bill not calling that timeout, he basically got to see what package Seattle was putting on the fields. And that's where you get the Malcolm Go by Flores, because all of a sudden they're like, Jesus, we saw this in practice. Look at what they're going to run.
Yeah.
So get the kid in there. It's just, I don't know. It's like going back to the Pats and where they're going to finish this year. It's like you have to add value to the winning percentage when you have good coaching.
Yep. So that's my number 2. I love that game. I was on the edge of my seat at the end. I'll remember celebrating with some buddies. We were at Carl's house. I don't know where you were to watch the game, but like we all freaked out. It was amazing, incredible. Not a ton of fun watching it, like up till the last 7 minutes in the game. But I think there's another game that's probably on both our lists that was probably even more miserable to watch up until the end. So number 3 for me is an old one. For you, it was the Rams game. For me, it was the Raiders game that same year, the Snowball.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be because Brady had this amazing stat line, because he didn't, and we'll talk about it. But, like, that was a very memorable night for me just because I was in college at the time. It was obviously snowing outside where I went to college because it was snowing in New England. I consider him to have made some very clutch plays. His stat line was 32 for 52 with 312 yards, which is a lot in back then, never mind the snow game. He actually did not have any touchdowns, but he did have a rushing touchdown that was very clutch at the time. I don't know if you remember that. It was he kind of scrambled down, scored, spiked it, fell over, right?
Still white.
I guess it's what you'd expect from him, but it was super clutch. He had some big throws on that drive to put him in position to kick that. There was a couple field goals that game. It was just the best. You really had a good feeling about Brady from that point on.
So you probably have the stats up there.
Yeah.
You said how many yards? 300 what?
312.
How many completions?
32.
Wow.
So 32 and 52. So, not a high percentage, but they were just throwing the ball a ton that game.
Yeah, because I don't remember anything really vertical. It was just a lot of, tight end stuff.
Well, that's what they did. Backs out of the backfield. Troy Brown maybe across the field.
Sure. I was going to say, can you pull up who had what for receptions out of curiosity? I would guess that Wiggins probably had the majority of them that game.
Yeah, if you look at the receiving stuff, Patton had 107 yards. Wiggins had 68. Brown had 43. Redmond, 43. Full 22. So it's really just like the Patton, Wiggins, and Brown show for receivers, and then it's just running backs out of the backfield. I do think Troy Brown had a pretty big catch on one of those drives, like I was saying. So end of the day, it was just you got this kid that filled in for Drew Bledsoe, kept his job, and then went on for his first playoff game in home in the snow, and had one of the great comebacks and great endings in playoff football history. I'll never forget that night. It was amazing. So not the best stat line, but in terms of favorite Brady games, it's definitely up there for me.
Well, I mentioned that Super Bowl game as sort of kickstarting the Brady, whatever you want to call this. Mm-hmm. It really kind of started with that game, this Raiders game.
Yeah,
it really did.
Good stuff, good memories. Honestly, that Pittsburgh game after was awesome too. Brady ended up getting hurt. Bledsoe came in, and obviously the Super Bowl we already talked about, but that was just a great playoff run. It was awesome.
Who caught the touchdown in that Pittsburgh game? Yes, good job. Patton. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. That was great. That was a great storyline, man. Bledsoe coming back, contributing to that playoff run. You're like, who's going to start? Bledsoe, Brady. Obviously went with Brady. It's just like a wild circumstance.
Listen, man, Drew Bledsoe, his friendship with Tom, to me, is just so awesome.
Yeah.
Calls him Tommy. He's like a big brother. Bledsoe could have been a BIT, about the whole situation. And he just handled that amazingly, didn't he?
Yeah, I don't think you find many people in New England that have a lot of bad things to say about Bledsoe at this point, because I think everyone appreciates the tough situation that he was in. It ended up being the right call, obviously, when you look back to 20 years later, but he did handle it about as good as he could have. I think there was some bitterness a little bit here and there, and that kind of showed at certain post-game interviews or some of the pre-Super Bowl stuff, but in general, he handled it about as good as he could for a guy that got paid $100 million, highly regarded, had some success, took him to one Super Bowl to just get like kind of replaced for, for this other guy that was 100 pick 199.
Yeah, good points. Yep.
Yeah. So, all right, what do you got for number 2?
28-3, baby.
That's your number 2. Wow.
Number 1's going to surprise you.
Okay, I'm anxious to hear it. So we already did my number 2 in the Seattle game. This is definitely my number 1. But you go ahead. You get the floor here.
All right. So 466 yards. In Brady's, you look at his Super Bowl stats, it's like you got the stinker with the Rams, an uptick with the Eagles and Carolina. You got that last Rams one where it's like the stat line was terrible, but there's a couple of bang biscuits, if you will. This one is one of them. The 466, two TDs, a bad interception, pick 6.
Very bad interception.
I mean, 0 scoring in the first for both teams. Okay, Slow start, man. Then we gave up 21 going into the half.
Yeah, 21-3 at halftime. I remember sitting there, again, I was at Carl's house. We used to go to Carl's every Super Bowl before we all had kids, or before my kids at least had grown up. And I remember sitting down in a chair at halftime and just being miserable. It was probably one of the least fun football experiences that I ever had. Yeah, Brady, that pick 6 was awful. It was an 82-yard pick 6. And I don't know what the numbers are, but I imagine that like teams that throw a pick 6 lose the game that they're playing, 80% of the time. So it was just like bad feeling all around.
Well, for me, it was just when you saw that kid pick it and you saw Tom, the Clydesdale sort of attempt to get back to him, it had that feeling of like, man, the book is closing. Mm-hmm. This sucks. This is going to be our last one. He's playing like this. And it's, and then he just goes into the phone booth, and it's like, go ahead.
No, you're right. When I went in the phone booth with 2 minutes left in the third quarter, they're down 28-3 from that point on, and then the rest is just all pass. And the thing that I love about it is just a lot of guys stepped up. Edelman stepped up, Amendola stepped up, there was field goals, James White, all these guys really stepped up. But like Brady had to be perfect from that point on, and he was perfect. Every throw was just on the money and incredibly clutch. Have these games like the Raiders game where it's like, okay, one clutch throw to set up a field goal or clutch run or here and there. He probably had 15 clutch throws in that last quarter and a half.
I mean, a couple of things to bring up. That second half as you score. So we finally score, right? We're down. We only have 3 points. We finally score. Naturally, Gostkowski misses the PAT, right? So we finally score with 2 minutes to go. And it's like, Gostkowski again? Because if you remember, a couple of years prior to that, he missed the PAT in Denver, which forced us to go for a 2-point conversion.
I remember it well, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like you got to give the D credit. Hightower with a timely sack. I mean, what the hell were they doing?
I think there was a holding penalty that maybe pushed them back on a first down.
Yeah.
The stars truly aligned for that victory. Edelman had that catch where he had to fight for it. It was, I don't know if he tipped it or he just like it was crazy. Unbelievable catch. Love Edelman. Edelman is actually my number 2 favorite Patriot. We could probably have a podcast about our top 5 Pats guys, but like I just think when it comes to guys that left it all on the field, tough, gave everything they had, like Edelman is that guy. At least that's the way that I view him. That play was a perfect example of that.
So, random thing, Brady has thrown so many amazing balls. Anything that you could mention about Randy Moss. We could go back to that Seattle playoff game. He threw a ball to LaFell to put us ahead that was just in a bucket. Brady's favorite pass of all time for me is that dime piece in OT early in the drive. Dole is in the slot. He goes about 10 yards and then runs an out to the sideline. The DB was on him. There was a centimeter. And it's so funny. It's almost like I wish we could insert that clip here to show that ball. That ball right there, when he completed that pass, I'm like, you already felt like we were going to win it anyways, but it just had that feel because it's like if Brady snaps that a little bit and short arms it, that kid's running the other way, and we're just like, Jesus, what the hell just happened? That's my favorite Brady ball of all time. It's such a
big time throw. Those throws to the sidelines, those are like long throws, and you have to put it in a very, very tight window, and yeah, he definitely did. Right, he still had it at that point. It was awesome. Man. Best football experience. I actually wish I would have went to that Super Bowl game, man. I think it was in Minnesota. Not that I had a chance to go to it, but like I've always wanted to go to a Super Bowl game. And there was a time I was like, man, we should get tickets. It feels like this might be the end for the Pats. It didn't end up being the end, but I remember when it happened. I'm like, man, I should have. Did I just miss my last opportunity to see Brady win a Super Bowl? But it was amazing.
How about this round?
What?
Tom goes back to New England.
And then they go to the Super Bowl and we go?
Let's make a pact.
Okay. If that happened, I'll buy season tickets and we'll go to every game.
In. So,
what's your number one?
This is Brady's Picasso. I don't
know what you're going to say, by the way, just so you know. Like, I can't even think of what this is going to be.
So, you had multiple times in Brady's career when it's like, man, is it over? You had a couple of those Giants losses. The first one, early in his career. The second one in 11. It's like, is this not us? Is this just not for us? We barely squeak by in Seattle. We squeak by in this Atlanta game. It's almost like another tier to his greatness. Sorry, this is one hell of a preamble. That divisional playoff game in Kansas City was absolute gold for me.
Is this the one against Mahomes?
Yeah.
That one was good. That was amazing. That would have been honorable mention territory for me.
So a couple of, let me see here, man. 37-31, we win in overtime. He has 348 yards. That was a big rush game by Sony Michel, which really ends up being the only decent draft pick of that draft, by the way. Yeah. What gets me about this game is that you could see it with Jules, and I love how that was highlighted after the fact. You could see Jules obscurely in some of these random shots yelling at Brady on the sidelines. You know what he was yelling? He was yelling, "You're too old. You're too old." Jules is such a dude. He's such a freaking psycho, Jules, and he knows how to tweak Brady. But what I love the most about that game, and I sort of put it in number one for me, is that the narrative that we were getting old was there. Mm-hmm. We barely squeaked by Jacksonville with that cut on his hand, which was a great win. Mm-hmm. Gilmore with the late tip, also I believe was a quarterback. But we get into that game, we're up, Casey's flying back at us, and we have 3 third and longs late in that game, and Jesus comes out of the phone booth. And it's just like, let me throw to my Binky Gronk. Yeah. Let me throw to my Binky Gronk. And then he hits Jules in the slot, and then, you have another Sony Michel touchdown. It's just, it's almost like this thing where it's like the gift that keeps on giving if you're a New England fan. It was just, in my mind, I'm like, if we win this, if we can pull this off, this is just another layer. It's maybe the next tier that we talk about. Is this 4 tiers to his remarkable career? I know that I go off on this stuff, Rand, but this one sticks out to me.
Well, it felt like you said, the narrative too is like just this Mahomes narrative, right? Is it the young kids' time to take the reins from Brady? Yeah. They had a better record that year. Definitely felt like they were the better team going into the game. Pats actually jumped out to a lead. That's what made it even bearable for to watch the game. It wasn't like these other games where you're down the whole time. Yeah, we were up 14-0, then 17-7. Obviously, Casey came back in the fourth, but yeah, no, Brady shut that whole narrative down for that year and extended. I think Casey won it the year afterwards, but yeah, that was a huge game, and then we went on to beat the Rams. So,
what a bad Super Bowl though. Very boring Super Bowl. It's just, I don't even know why it had to be like that. It's, again, Brady with a bad INT early in that game. Do you remember that? Yeah. And it's kind of it was a table setter for the rest of that game, that it was just going to be a grinded out thing, and Gronk, making it through.
Catch down that left sideline at one point.
Yeah. We got invited to this golf tournament, and his brother Gordy was there, Gordy Gronkowski, and the big partier. Let me tell you, the length on these Gronkowskis will floor you when you're by them in real life. But he had mentioned a decent amount of CCs taken out of that hip. He really got hit hard. It was amazing that he got through that game, and it was not surprising that it made him retire because he was just sick of getting hurt. But
he took a beating throughout his career. But I'm glad that he was able to contribute, a memorable play in that Super Bowl, because he's a guy that I think he missed some playoffs. He was in a Super Bowl one year as kind of a decoy where his leg was, he was a shell of himself for that one. So it was nice for him to contribute to, and have a big memorable play in one last Super Bowl with the Pats.
So I'm looking at the clock here. We're about 53 minutes in. Mm-hmm. That was a pretty solid 5 list right there. I'm glad we didn't cross-pollinate a lot. Can we do?
Yeah, nice. There was a little bit of difference there. Love it. A lot of great memories talking about those games. It's kind of fun.
Can we do a quick honorable mention?
Tell me, what do you got?
This one sticks with me. The 2018 Super Bowl. The Philly special.
Okay, yeah. I mean, Brady had a great game. He had 500 yards, I believe.
So, okay, I was going to ask you, what do you think it was?
I mean, it was low fives. I mean, it was like 504 or something like that.
Ooh, good call. 505.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that is the record, though. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, yeah. Dude,
yeah.
505, 3 touchdowns. The thing that kills me about this game, can I go off on this for a second?
Definitely, yeah.
If you look at that play where he got strip sacked, if you look at it from behind the quarterback, there is an image of this, a video of this. Shaq Mason, the great Shaq Mason, now playing for Tampa Bay. He let up 1 quarterback pressure all year. 1, Randy. Not 2. Not 3. That was it. So if you look at that, James White is in the flat. So Tom's kind of going through a read or two, and he's coming over real quick to go to White. If you see that video, there's not one defender within 25 yards of James White.
That's frustrating.
Dude, it is so frustrating because I think we had to go 80 yards there to score a touchdown to take the lead, which probably would have bled the clock to the point where we won that game. Again, all assumables, all assumptions. I get it. Beds, you're a homer. But
yeah,
what if, Randy, that stat line is 570 yards and 4 touchdowns?
Yeah. It's hard. You can't really have that on the list. I mean, I guess honorable mention probably makes sense for that one, given that it was a loss. But that could have been like number 1 or 2 if they go down and win that Super Bowl with a last, fourth quarter drive and that stat line. It'd be crazy.
So I know I kind of introduced something here to our top 5 by going honorable. Let me hit you. Do you have one that sticks with you?
If I was going to pick anything, it'd probably be that Rams Super Bowl. Just for the reasons that we already talked about, but that was one of the ones that I was thinking about putting on the list, but really wanted to sneak that Raiders game in. So for me, that's the only one that comes to mind. Nothing particular. I wanted the games on my list to be things that I could come up with or remember on the top of my head, right? Like just whether it's like images or just things about those games. So that's how I kind of did my top 5. But nothing from that second and third Super Bowl run really came to mind. I remember a little bit about that Carolina game and obviously the way that it ended, but I feel like that first run and then the stuff from his 4th and 5th Super Bowl were some of the most memorable stuff for me.
How about this? Let me rephrase. Is there a loss that sticks to you?
Not that it should, but that Tennessee loss, that last game that the Pats lost in Foxborough. Not that I thought that they were going to win it all that year. It was just a shitty way for Brady to go out in New England. I think his last pass was picked off.
Logan Ryan.
Yeah, you're right. So that was a tough one. Because then he obviously went on to leave the Pats, and so that one always leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But how can I be that upset when we went to 4 Super Bowls in the 5 years leading up to it?
It was just such an amazing run. Mm-hmm. It's actually just to triple and quadruple down here. It's going to be amazing when we're playing in the Super Bowl in the next 2 years with Tom.
I love it. Let's do it. Awesome, buddy. Anything else you want to add?
You know what? Thanks to the listeners for listening.
Yeah.
And thanks for having me on. I'm having a lot of fun doing this.
Definitely, dude. We'll figure out what the next one is. This won't be posted until next week, but Thanksgiving's tomorrow. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving, and I hope everybody else had an awesome holiday.
Definitely, man. All right, good times, pal. Take care. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, bud. See ya.